Welcome to The Explainer. You know that vitamin aisle? It's a multi-billion-dollar industry. But what are we really buying? Today, we're going to cut through all that hype. We're going to find out what's safe, what actually works, and what's just a total waste of your money.
All right, let's get right into it. Picture this. You're walking down that vitamin aisle. It's just a wall of promises, right? Bottles screaming health and vitality at you. But what is really going on behind those shiny labels?
I mean, it is a huge market. We're talking over 90,000 different products just in the US. It's dizzying, and honestly, it can be super misleading for all of us. You see all these bottles. They're designed to look like medicine, right? But here's the absolute key thing you have to understand. They aren't regulated like medicine, not even close.
And that's where you see this giant gap between what they promise and what's really in the bottle. The marketing sells you this perfect image of purity. You know, these targeted health benefits, quality, safety. But when independent labs actually test these things, they find a completely different story. We're talking about cheap fillers, doses that are all over the place, and sometimes even dangerous contaminants.
And this isn't just a theory, this is real. Back in 2015, the New York Attorney General's office did this shocking investigation. They used DNA testing on herbal supplements from huge retailers, and guess what they found? A lot of them had zero of the advertised herb. Instead, it was just junk like powdered rice and houseplants. And it gets worse. Other investigations found major brand multivitamins that don't even dissolve in your stomach. They're literally useless. And then there's the truly terrifying case of Purity First. Their B vitamin supplement was contaminated with illegal anabolic steroids, which caused severe, life-altering side effects for dozens of people. So you have to be asking, how is any of this possible? Right? How can something you put in your body every single day be so unregulated? Well, the answer, believe it or not, comes down to one single law passed decades ago.
Okay, here's the culprit. It's a 1994 law called the Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act, or DSHA for short. What happened was, back in the early 90s, the FDA tried to get a handle on this and apply stricter rules. The industry freaked out. They launched this enormous lobbying campaign, and Congress caved, passing DSHA. This law completely changed the game. It literally flipped the entire system upside down. Now, instead of companies having to prove their product is safe, the FDA, which is super underfunded for this, has to prove a supplement is unsafe after it's already on the market and people are taking it.
And right here, this is the heart of the problem. Because of that law, DSHA, that bottle of pills on the shelf is legally treated like a category of food. Think about that. It's regulated more like a box of cereal than a bottle of medicine. So unlike a real drug, the manufacturer doesn't have to prove it's safe. They don't have to prove it's effective. They can just sell it, no questions asked. You know, an expert in that Frontline documentary on this topic put it perfectly. He said, it's an absurd system. He thinks we'll look back years from now and just wonder, how could we have possibly done this? It basically turned the clock back 100 years, straight back to the days of snake oil salesmen. You can make all these wild claims without any proof, and you, the consumer, are just left to cross your fingers and hope for the best. Okay, so the market is a mess. We've established that. But that brings up an even more fundamental question. Let's just pretend for a second that every bottle was perfectly pure and accurately dosed. Do most of us even need to be taking them in the first place? Let's see what the actual science from major clinical trials has to say about it. All right, first things first. Dosage. You hear this all the time in the supplement world. More is better. But, you know, science tells a very, very different story. The idea of megadosing can be really dangerous, especially with what are called fat-soluble vitamins. That's A, D, E, and K. So your body stores them. They build up. And this isn't just a theory. Big studies have actually linked taking high-dose vitamin E to a higher risk of prostate cancer and a really dangerous kind of stroke.
So let's get specific. Let's look at one of the biggest and best studies ever done on this, the VITAL trial. It had over 25,000 people. So, what did they find for vitamin D? Well, the results were complicated. It wasn't the magic bullet for preventing heart attacks or bone fractures that everyone thought it would be. But, and this is a big but, it did show some really cool potential benefits, like a significant drop in autoimmune diseases like rheumatoid arthritis, and maybe even a reduction in deaths from advanced cancer. So it's not a simple yes or no.
And it's a similar story for omega-3s from fish oil. The VITAL trial found it didn't really lower the overall risk of heart problems across the board, but it did specifically reduce the risk of heart attacks by 28%. And here's the most important part. That benefit was biggest for people who didn't eat much fish to begin with. So what does that tell you?
It's not a wonder pill for everyone. It's more like a tool to fill a very specific gap in your diet.
Okay, so what about just a simple, boring, daily multivitamin? This is where the science gets surprisingly interesting. A couple of really large trials found some real benefits. One study found a modest 8% drop in the overall risk of cancer, but another one found that multivitamins slowed down cognitive decline, that's thinking and memory problems, in older adults by a whopping 60% over 3 years. So the big takeaway from all this science is pretty clear. Supplements are not a miracle cure. The benefits, when they actually exist, are usually pretty specific and often modest, not the crazy cure-all promises you see on the bottle.
So, where does that leave us? How are you supposed to navigate this incredibly confusing world? Okay, let's wrap this up with a simple, actionable plan. We're going to go from the confusion of that vitamin aisle to real clarity about what's right for you.
All right, here's your framework. It's just 3 steps. And listen, this isn't about saying all supplements are bad. It's about being smart. Step 1, and this is the absolute most important. Prioritize your diet. You can't fix a bad diet with a pill. Real food is always, always number 1. Step 2, figure out if you have a specific need. Don't just guess. And step 3, if you actually need a supplement, for God's sakes, choose a good one. Don't just grab the cheapest thing on the shelf.
So, who actually might need something? Well, the science is pretty clear on this. For example, if you're pregnant, taking folic acid is absolutely crucial to prevent certain birth defects. If you're an older adult, your body sometimes just doesn't absorb nutrients from food as well. If you have a condition like Crohn's or celiac. And of course, if you're a vegan, you likely need a B12 supplement since it's almost only found in animal foods. If you're in one of these groups, talking to your doctor about a targeted supplement is a really good idea.
And if you decide you do need to buy something, how do you pick a good one? Here's what to look for. Since we know the FDA isn't checking these things before they're sold, you want to look for a little seal on the bottle from a third-party certifier. Think groups like USP or NSF. That seal means an independent lab has actually tested that product and verified that what's on the label is what's in the pill. You also want to look for brands that use what are called bioavailable ingredients. That's just a fancy way of saying it's a form your body can actually absorb and use. And of course, try to avoid all those unnecessary fillers and artificial colors you see in the cheaper brands.
So at the end of the day, it really comes down to this. Yeah, a few supplements have some very specific, evidence-backed uses, but the true foundation of good health, that's not something you're ever going to find in a bottle. It really leaves us with a simple question to ask yourself next time you're standing in that vitamin aisle. Is your health really in a pill, or is it on your plate?